You ready?
Yes.
What are we actually talking about? Like, are you?
So no.
No.
Use that for the intro. That'll be good.
They set me up on that one.
Welcome everyone to the Pat and Paul Show. I am Paul Michelotti. I am joined as always by my co-host Pat McLaughlin.
Hello.
Pat.
Paul.
How you doing?
I'm all right.
You know, we're here today with Mark Daugherty.
Very special guest.
Very special guest.
Hi, everyone.
Came
Hi,
all
guys.
the way from down the hall.
Thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for bringing us drinks.
You're welcome. It's the least I could do.
Is that coffee for the whole class?
There's probably enough.
Yeah.
There's
Was
about
this
20
on
ounces
your
there, so-
rider that you submitted
Yeah.
so you would appear on the show?
Yeah, coffee.
Hand ground beans.
Mm-hmm.
Because this is your, like, you brew this in the morning, right?
I
Like,
do.
This is,
Yeah.
do you French press this?
No,
or
I
what
use
do
a
you-
Chemex. Chemex. Just pour over, yeah.
Do I know what a Chemex, is that the funnel?
Yeah, it kind
thing?
of looks like an hourglass.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely my preferred method. I have a French press, but I like almost never use it. The Chemex is nice because it's like clean, it's filtered, so it's not quite as sedimenty as the is that
Yeah.
the word sedimenty? Sedimentatious,
Right.
sedimentary.
Dealing of sediment, yes.
Yep. As the French press, so that's good.
Now, have you matured your brew over time? Or
Yeah, I think it kind of leveled off, and now I've sort of like plateaued where
Right.
I hit a point where I'm happy enough with it, so I've
Right.
stopped trying. Kind of like development.
so I was going to say, does this mirror your current philosophy
Yeah.
in development?
Yeah, I've leveled off, and now I'm pursuing other interests.
You've reached the top. And now it's all about
Yeah,
brewing beer and cooking briskets.
yeah. But now the coffee is enough to sustain me, just as my development skills are enough to sustain my lifestyle.
Excellent.
Yeah, so that's good. No, it's it's like it takes some practice with the brewing, the coffee, and the beans and like the whole thing. But it's really like pretty simple.
Yeah.
It's not that complicated.
What kind of
Again,
time,
much like development.
Yes.
Yeah,
What kind of time does it add on your morning? Is it a 10, 15 minute process or is it longer?
maybe 10 or 12 minutes. It's actually like the brew time is only like 4 minutes, and then there's just a couple minutes of like, get the beans out, measure
Gotcha.
them, grind them.
Yeah.
The water. Use like a kettle for the water to boil, so that takes a few minutes. But it's one of those things where I don't like think about it, and I just kind of like enjoy the ritual. So
Yeah.
it's not. I don't think it was like, oh god, I gotta make coffee. Like it's not really like a big deal. I mean, only once in a blue moon do I feel like, I'm too like lazy to do it. But usually I don't mind it, and it saves so much like money over. It's like, well, if I'm already like buying myself lunch every day and everything, I don't
Yeah.
need to add like $4 coffee and on top of that,
Right.
and the inevitable pastry and all that other stuff.
Right. It's a great conversation piece too.
Yeah, it looks cool. It's like this kind of looks like something that belongs in like a chemistry lab,
Yeah.
which is good, and it has like a technical element too, so it satisfies that
That side of
sort
your
desire for like
your
precision and
Right.
so it's not just kind of like thrown together. Oh, it looks good.
Yeah.
It's like everything's measured, so that's cool.
Very
So you
nice.
feel like you're doing something that's like really like almost scientific and
Yeah.
like repeatable.
important.
Yeah, important. Well, yes, important to me, right? Not important to anyone else.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, Jen drinks it too, doesn't she?
Yeah, although of late she hasn't been drinking as much coffee, so I've been kind of like,
That's a bummer.
Okay.
yeah.
So it's not a quality problem, is it?
I don't think so.
Is she
yeah.
secretly getting other coffee? She's not telling
If
you.
it is a quality problem, she's too polite to tell me. Yeah, so
It's
for what it's worth. Yeah.
Starbucks.
There I see her rolling with a Dunkin' Double D coffee. Like, it's just,
She's tried something new.
yeah. The coffee makes too strong.
You don't put 2 scoops of sugar in yours.
Yeah. Well, that's true, yeah.
Cool. Well,
So we wanted to talk about
Coffee.
philosophy. Well, coffee. But
coffee.
Philosophy of development is what I've been sort of calling it. And
Yep.
I don't know if it's a great name for it, but you're the most philosophical guy I know when it comes to development.
I can't possibly disappoint after that.
Right.
I've been hoisted up on this.
Because what is I've been saying philosophy of development so long that I'm not even sure what I mean by it.
It seems a little
anymore.
broad, right?
Yeah.
Like you kind of have to like narrow it down to.
Well, would you?
something.
I guess would you characterize it or define it as like, say, different methods of development? Say like your test-driven development, your behavioral-driven development. Is that kind of what you're thinking philosophy-wise, or is it more technical than that?
I would say less technical.
Less
It's
technical.
almost less
Yeah.
technical.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But it can. I mean, I think it can involve that because part of it has to do with sort of your coding style, probably, and like the fact, like you said the other day, you were looking at some of my code, and you're like, I know immediately that you coded this. Like,
Right.
I recognize
Yeah.
your signature shenanigans in here.
Yeah.
Sarcastic comments and whatnot.
No
Naming,
comments.
formatting, yeah, just all
Right.
that kind of thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but
Well, I think that's something that's not talked about a lot, or when you're talking about coding, it's like to me, there's an art to it. Like it's artistic, and the way, and that's why you can identify who wrote
It is,
code just
yeah.
by looking, is because people have different styles, different patterns.
right.
But at the end, at least for me, I like when I finish a class or anything really. I like that it looks good. Like to me, that
Yeah.
it's like it has that element that I like. I think
Yeah.
it looks. What's a good word for that?
Aesthetic sensibility.
Yeah, aesthetic. Yeah,
Yeah.
Like that's a nice aesthetic when you
Yeah.
read it, and so even deciding on a different way to implement an if statement or like
Yeah.
how you structure that is kind of a style choice as much
Yeah.
as a technical
Yeah,
choice.
it's not a completely utilitarian
No.
process.
Right. And it's I think good developers should take that into consideration. That
Yeah.
you want to not produce you want to produce something that is functional.
Yeah.
But that also is very easy to read, very easy to turn over to someone else, and that all plays into that.
Now, when you say functional, you got to be careful. That's a loaded term.
Yeah.
Is that your development philosophy?
No.
Functional? Because it's mine.
Yeah, it's not mine.
Functional. It should all be functional. I mean,
Yeah,
I hope-
ideally.
I know.
I've seen a few people who go against that particular philosophy,
Yeah.
but
doesn't compile, doesn't run.
I neither use functions nor want it to function at the end.
Should we say lowercase f functional? Is that like a good way to distinguish between like functional as in it works versus like functional as like functional
it's a
programming?
particular style.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, like you say, Pat, I've always believed that there's like a certain, and this is maybe something that, after you learn the fundamentals, the basics of whatever you're doing, it starts to become important as to how well you're doing it, and then what it looks like is definitely like a component of that.
Yeah.
Right? Like, is it, the most obvious thing is like, oh, okay, it's, formatted and readable, and you're following, whatever the conventions are for that particular language or framework. But then beyond that into, you're sort of like, I don't even want to call it flair, because there shouldn't be like a huge amount of variation from one person's code to the next, but the variation is almost like at the design level. Like, how are you, if you're writing an API or a library, how are things structured? How do you name things? How do you organize things? Do you there's all sorts of little sort of like in between the margin stuff that in a particular implementation that sort of reveal what more about your style or how you're designing your code.
Do you guys think, like, let's say you guys are both architects, you're reviewing a lot of developers' code all the time. As you're reviewing that, do you think that is something when you're a junior developer that you start out with, that you were taught in school or wherever you learned to code, or do you think, like, say for instance, naming variables appropriately? I mean, that is not just a style choice; it's also a good method of programming to make it readable, right?
Yeah.
When I started coding in the VB world, you put obj in front of objects.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, when I was coding in C or whatever, it was very short.
Right.
Do like the underscores and all that stuff.
Yeah, exactly.
For internal variables versus Java's a little bit different in that regard, right? Because Java has conventions on casing, but it doesn't really.
Right.
I mean, people do it incorrectly, in my opinion, but most of the convention is it's a little bit less prescribed, I guess.
Yeah.
It's more like up to the developer and up to the architect to enforce
Right.
naming convention beyond like the bare minimum of
Yeah.
casing.
And this is where I was going before, is do you guys think that is something that's learned, that you pick up along the way from reading other people's code, or do you think developers really need to be taught that when they're starting out, or are these different style choices to make things readable? How do you acquire that?
So when I'm looking at code, not even just from junior developers, it can be across the board. you can definitely tell the difference between somebody who has developed a certain way of coding, a certain philosophy of development, if we want to continue leaning into that particular term, and somebody who is copying and pasting snippets from Stack Overflow and trying to change as little as possible and just get a thing to work. And the latter is probably what I see more often. And it's something that I think you can acquire from looking at other people's code and, relying on the advice of those, standing on the shoulders of giants, if you will. But only if you have a desire to do so and an understanding that that's even a thing to do, right? If you're rewarded consistently for copying and pasting from Stack Overflow, then you're going to keep doing that.
Right. Yeah, that's almost like an entire separate conversation, the idea of how, we provide like feedback and is that sufficient, and because, a lot of people would say, I can go through almost my entire career without, being sort of like, scolded or redirected from doing things a particular way.
Yeah.
What, a lot of us would consider like the wrong way.
Right. Although I will say I've often lamented the fact that I've never found anyone who I've considered really a mentor. Like, and I've always kind of wanted that. Like I've wanted somebody or some buddies to like be a mentor to me, and because I've kind of developed my own sort of style from looking at as you said, looking at other people's code, reading, videos on YouTube, conventions, things of that nature. Looking to
reading videos on YouTube. You said,
right? Well, reading the transcripts, reading the comments,
the caption,
to get a feel how the public at large.
Yeah, I want to know what Joe Everyman thinks about this functional programming thing.
Yeah, well, I'm sure it's extremely racist.
What are the kids saying about ECMAScript?
Yeah.
How many likes does it have?
I'm sure it's very hateful.
Yeah, but I've never run across somebody like even at like college is probably where you're supposed to find this, right? Like,
a mentor?
I don't know, maybe.
I feel like it's maybe a little bit too. Well, I think the easiest way, to get to find yourself like a mentor is to let your skills sort of like degrade. To the point that
somebody has to lift you up.
Eventually,
someone has to get involved.
Eventually, someone that's not currently as good as you are will surpass you, and then they can be your mentor.
They can become your mentor.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's like in the current state, that would be the easiest way. But I actually did. It's funny you mentioned that because I feel like early in my career I did have someone that I would consider a mentor. I don't know if he like realized that at the time, but. Yeah. When I was at my like second job, so that was probably at like 2.5 years into my career at that point. Someone who's a really outstanding Java developer and also just like a good, smart like developer in general. And he's someone that like wrote really clean code. He was very like critical of other people's stuff. He wasn't like afraid to like rip something up and rewrite it the correct way. He understood design patterns. All the stuff that you look for like in a good like senior dev or architect,
right?
And he was very like instrumental in sort of like raising the code quality of everyone around him. So that was like extremely helpful to me as like a younger developer, and I really took to it because I was like, oh, okay, like here's someone that like knows the right way to do things, so I can sort of like lean on him as being, rather than kind of like wondering like, oh, is this other senior developer I'm working with, are they doing things correctly, whatever. It was nice to be able to have that as like sort of a source of truth.
Right.
And the fact that he was very engaging about like, hey, let's do some code reviews, which at that point I'd never done a code review or, so it was like, it was nice to know that, you have like that sort of like critical outlet to get feedback and give feedback. So that was good for me like early on, and I think after that I definitely made like, that was when I made like the biggest leap in my career as far as like going from just kind of like hacking away at things to actually like understanding and writing like more concise, elegant, clean code. So that was definitely it was definitely important to me at the time.
I had a similar experience.
Yeah.
I was about a year into like programming career, and I had a different path. I didn't study programming in college.
Oh, okay.
It was something. I was an intern at another job, and there was an opening, and I like in certain. So I ended up teaching myself C# with another person at the company. So I learned off of the websites, and I bought a book and that kind of stuff, which was really good. But it wasn't until I started my second job, where I was working for an actual software company, and it was things like handling exceptions and like good design patterns, and using I always refer to like reflection as a means to make it more dynamic, and logging patterns. And when I think about it, all the same things that like when I'm looking at other people's code now, those have stayed with me. Like I always think back, and I like when I felt like I took the leap, as you were talking about, was when I started having opinions about it and go, you know what?
Yeah.
I really liked how you did it. I actually think I'd prefer it this way, and this is why, and to start having those kind of conversations.
Right.
That's to me is where you're growing into that, like, becoming a better coder and like caring about, like you said, like, it's like, say, the naming of variable. It's when you start thinking about it, it's like, this is why I want to name, but this is the reason why. And
because that's the leap, right? Is that there's the step where, I mean, there's the step where you don't care at all.
Right.
There's the step where you care because somebody else has informed you that you should care.
Yeah.
And there's the step where you care because you've developed your own opinions about, why you're doing things certain ways and why certain practices are valuable.
Yeah. I mean, the first step is actually like having like the desire to actually like be, more than just like, a piece of basically.
Right. Yeah.
Like, I don't, I just want to like get done whatever task I'm at, and so I can like go home and like, eat popcorn on my couch.
But so many people stop at that step.
Well, yeah, right? And that's why they're not, on the television.
yeah,
that's why
they have their own show.
Yeah. Do they have a YouTube show? No.
We probably do.
Yeah.
Actually, they do. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
Might be more interesting.
They've got the time.
But it's not for programming, right?
No.
It's for something else.
Yeah.
No, so, I mean, that's the difference right
Probably
there.
more. Yeah, probably funnier.
Yeah, it's probably more entertaining.
Definitely, it's definitely funny.
But that's like the first, like, you obviously have to be like self-motivated, right? You can't, like a hypothetical mentor can't, drag you to like become a better programmer just through like sheer force of will.
Right.
That doesn't work.
Yeah.
People have to have that willingness to like to learn to be better, to whatever. It's the same as it's one of those things that's certainly not exclusive to like programming, right? That's true of any skill
trade,
or trade.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
There's going to be laborers, and then there's
and then eventually like people emerge who are kind of like the masters of whatever, and so. But mentors.
I've often wondered if there's if there's room for like an apprentice type situation in development, like there's I don't think do we value apprenticeship highly enough? Is that a thing that still happens?
In the world or in development?
Both.
It doesn't happen as much, right?
Yeah, I don't think it happens as much. I mean, it still happens in the trade. My father was a carpenter, and so I was guided down that path career-wise early on, and that there's still a 4-year apprenticeship, at least if you're joining the carpenters union and things like that. They still have that, and I imagine it's the same for other like electricians, plumbers, that type of thing.
Yeah, that sort of thing.
I mean, we could get into a much larger conversation where like the education in the United States is going in the next 20 to 30 years.
Sure.
So I would imagine at some point, like right now, we treat that as college. Like that's your training ground normally. Like we're hiring here. We're looking for computer science majors, right? That's where we start our search. I imagine if college starts becoming too expensive, that
now.
Yeah, I mean it's there now. I mean that's why I said we could talk about that quite a bit more. But what I would say is like if school becomes more specialized. I mean, when you join the apprenticeship program to be a carpenter, you learn how to be a carpenter. You're not learning other skills,
right?
Maybe that's how development goes. as people want to get into that industry but cannot afford to go to college or an apprenticeship, it would be a way to do that.
Yeah.
I mean, it's going to become necessary at some point, right? If things kind of continue unabated with,
Right.
with rising costs of education and everything. I mean, especially because for a lot of what we do, I mean, not to like degrade like our industry or anything, but like for the most part, like a lot of, the general like development tasks are not like so challenging that you need like a bachelor's or you don't need like a master's or even a bachelor's, right?
Right.
For a lot of what we do, I mean, you need experience, right? And you see, and you've always seen in software, you've always seen people that were dropouts and people that didn't go to college at all, were some of the biggest innovators in this industry, right? And both the hardware and software sides. So there's definitely like a history of that, but also like going forward, will it become more of just there's just like a certain segment of, developers like on a team that are, they're not necessarily college educated, but there's no reason that they can't be like extremely successful
Right.
in their career. I mean, I look at what I learned in college and it was like, important and critical, but I didn't like do that well. I didn't excel in college, but I feel like in my career, I've been able to be more successful because it's just just through experience, the experience is so much more valuable
Right.
than, sort of like the academic exercises, that introduces you to it, but you really have to learn like continuously, right? It's like anything else.
Yeah.
Yes. Will we get back to a point, or will we get to a point where maybe you do have some sort of apprenticeship as a developer and you become a developer, but then later if you want to broaden your view of the development landscape and really develop further, that's where you go to college, or maybe we'll start calling it university at that point, and really,
A little posh. But
but I'm,
It's a bit European.
That's
posh,
right?
you're posh, man.
Go to university.
You're an uppity.
yeah, you would go to university
Yeah.
to broaden your thinking on the matter and broaden your horizon, and not just go to learn how to code Java.
Yeah.